seen us before, but I'm Nichelle Boylan, GIR, ABR Realtor. GRI basically means that I did a lot of extra education, so I knew what I was talking about. And my goal is to kind of help you figure out what your wants, your needs are for your house. I do a lot of the negotiations. I'm on the back end working with all the paperwork. I partner with Ron to make sure that those seller concessions are within line with goals, and because there are requirements, as we recently learned on one of our files.
She maxed one out.
I got way too much
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
And so we have to figure out what to do with it. And then my biggest goal is to protect your rights, protect your money. I mean, a lot of people say that I help you find a house, and I really do help you find a house. But my ultimate goal is building and determining that relationship. And what that looks like for me is protecting your investment. And I partner with Ron to make sure that we're protecting your investment, and not only protecting it, but we're maximizing it.
Exactly. And that's kind of like what we're going to go over this, because you remember from the other homebuyer seminar that one of the things that drives me and that I'm super passionate about is the fact that homeowners have 40 times the net worth of a renter, and that's across all income levels. Because some people think, oh, I'll just wait, I'll save while renting. But renting is 100% interest. You get no equity gain, and at the end of that lease term, it just goes to nothing. Whereas if in that same time period you were in a one-bedroom condo or a house or something that you could easily afford, then that means that you would have accumulated equity through principal balance reduction. What does that mean? It means every time you make your payment, a portion goes towards your principal balance, reducing that, creating equity. But there's also appreciation and tax benefits of homeownership. So that's why this is something that drives me every day to wake up early, be on time, and do what I have to do, is this graph and the stat right here. And it's very sobering. But this is by design. And the more inventory that goes away to corporations and big investors, the harder it is for regular people just to get a start. And that's where we want to come in and validate and do these education pieces, because some people think you need $20,000, you need 20% down, all this crazy money, when there's other solutions. And that's part of where we're going to go in. And a lot of people are afraid of what happened in like 2007 and 8, right? The financial crisis. And they're like, well, what if that's going to happen? Are prices for homes going to drop drastically because rates? No. We see the reasons why it happened in 2007 and 8. We overbuilt based on demand. And there was a huge population drop between baby boomers and Generation X. And why that matters is the average age of a first-time homebuyer back then was about 33 years old. So if we look back 33 years from 2006, 2007, you're going to see in about 1973 a huge drop in population in that one generation as well. But look at that, 20 million people less were born in Gen X than baby boomers. So we should have been able to project this. And when we overbuild, because if you see that graph on the bottom, the most completions in history, what does that mean? Homes being built. And a huge drop in housing formations, people entering the market to buy a home. It's a recipe for disaster. Also, there was stated income loans and ninja loan. It was just a disaster area. But that's not going to happen again. And this is the stats. This is annual appreciation for the last 83 years on average across the country. And you can see only 6 times in our nation's history, home values dropping. 2007 through 11, and one time in 1990 by 1%. Everything else is either 0 or multiple digits. Look at what happened between 2022 and 24, 19, 6, 6, 5. And even other times throughout history in the 40s after World War II. We saw booms in housing value, and people wonder why they're falling further and further behind, and home ownership's getting more and more unattainable because there's scarcity. They're only making so many homes, and there's more people being born, more people moving to the country. So when you have more people fighting over a limited inventory, you're going to have appreciation. Now insert corporations that are buying 30 and 40% of inventory, and they're not releasing it back to the market. That's causing that demand to get sucked up even more. And so what we're doing is educating, because I love this quote by Seneca. It's or an adaptation of it. It's luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So like when you're ready and you've been talking with somebody, the right house comes along, bam, now you've capitalized on a market where Nichelle and I were just joking and laughing about it, but sellers are willing to give so much of concession. She actually hit the limit of how much concessions could be on one deal. And that's an interesting dynamic to be in, because the client ended up getting so much of a seller credit. We had to do some little things in the background to help them buy down their rate and do some other things because of the massive amount of credit. And that's where it's like they sound lucky. Can you imagine getting a check back at a client $4,600? I got another client $300 plus got a 2-1 buy down. So
Yes, you
like
did.
there's so many awesome opportunities that this is why we want you to look lucky and why we're doing this analysis and this training for you and everyone that joins us online as well, so that they can start to break down that fear. And this is where we're going to get into that on the next slide, is where we start to go over the common misconceptions. Because when you go online and you Google home search, what would you say the common input is about buying homes right now? Yep. Yep.
Property taxes.
Oh yeah. No, these are big, and that's the distraction piece. Everything's the sky's falling. The houses are going to crash by values and all this other stuff. Interest rates are so high, and people are buying it because these people get paid by clicks. If it doesn't look scary, how many people are going to click on it? If it's like bubble gums and rainbows, we're like, that's not scary. But if it looks like it's going to hurt you, because that's how our brains are trained, is to avoid pain and avoid like being hurt. So we naturally look for opportunities to justify our decision to stay compliant with the system and not buy, because they're like, oh, well, this said 7%. Renting is 100% interest. So would you rather pay 7 or 100? And that's where it's like people are falling behind because they don't understand how the velocity of money works. And we'll continue through, and again, going back to this. So what is the anatomy of a mortgage payment? What does that look like? There's the P&I. That's your principal and interest. That's how you build equity, is because of the portion goes to principal. And some people say, yeah, Ron, but like the first 15 years, a lot of it's going to interest. This is true, but it's still a portion is going to drop in your principal balance. But you're also making money in equity and through tax savings, because you get to write off your property tax, the interest on your own, any energy efficient upgrades. So there's benefits, taxes, which you had mentioned. Escrows are important. They can go up every year. That's why we got to buy what we can comfortably afford with room to spare, knowing that we have to scale with the house, because as properties appreciate, your property tax go up, but we can protect you from some of that with make sure your exemptions. But homeowners insurance can go up every year, because if your value of your home is higher, guess what? Your insurance should be higher. You're covering more property. This is why we have to make sure you're comfortable. And that's where the PITI is. It's your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance for your total payment. And a lot of people are like, well, what loan should I choose? There's all these different loans. There was stigma on FHA. VA gets a lot of hate, but there's different requirements for each. Conventional, they recently increased their loan limit to $832,750. That's a sign that properties are going up and up and up, because they have to continue to raise their limits to be conforming. Because any loan that's above that turns to a jumbo loan. Jumbo loans are a little less favorable than conventional loans. FHA, they're government-backed loans that are amazing, but they allow for higher DTI. So sometimes I've had doctors who didn't want to go through the doctor program, but just wanted to go FHA, who were allowed to go a little bit higher DTI, or people that went to college and now they have a degree in English, but they're teaching at a public school and their student debt's really high. It makes sense. But that's where we talk about specialty programs, second liens, down payment assistance. That's where we got to talk to people, because you don't want to prejudge your situation. You never want to look at your situation, say, I can't do this because X, Y, and Z. Talk to the professionals first. And then if you can't right now, at least you know when you can and what's the path look like, and then have someone that's going to walk with you on it. And so then we're going to go over, this is where we'll start the process of like qualifying, which we talked about, and I know that we've mentioned others, but it's important. Credit, because there's so many different things we see on our credit card statement. It shows a score. Credit Karma can show a score, and we can hit the next one, because the thing is, depending on what type of pull you're doing, it's going to have different algorithms. Because with mortgage, there's the FICO 2, the FICO 5, and the score 4 for TransUnion. It might be a little different than your consumer credit score with the Vantis 3.0 and all the different ones.
I can take a picture of that.
Yeah, take it.
You take as many pictures as you like. Ron, what's the difference between the FICO 2, 5, and 4? Is that just based to the credit company themselves or something different?
Some parts of it is like scoring algorithms to see about your probability of delinquency within a certain amount of time. Because like long-term mortgage is looking at, you're going to have this debt for theoretically 30 years. So they're going to look at different credit indicators than say a credit card that is a revolving debt, and that has a little bit, maybe a little bit more risk or a different structure of risk. Same thing with cars. That's why like when you get a car inquiry, every inquiry for a car could be a new car, but not every inquiry for a new house is an assumption of a new debt because you're buying a long-term amortized deal. But when you're thinking about, if I'm going to extend this money for 30 years to get paid in micro increments at a fraction of the cost to lend, because think credit cards, they're like 26, 29% interest. They want you to take a long time. So they're going to say your credit is perfect and that you're good to lend on, because they want to get that money up front, because they know most people are going to get close to the max, pay them this interest forever, and service that debt and service that debt. Whereas with mortgage, they're making a smaller percentage over a longer period of time, so they're going to be a little bit more scrutinizing with the scores. That's why sometimes you'll see them a little lower than credit card. But that doesn't mean you can't get a deal. With FHA, there's programs down to like 570. Some programs don't even have a credit score requirement. So that's where we just got to look at what's your current situation. And that's why I always like showing this slide, because some clients have gone through stuff. It's life. And they had to file bankruptcy or short sale or have a foreclosure. But it's not the end of the world. As you can see, Chapter 13 with conventional, it's after 2 years after discharge. 1 year if the bankruptcy payments were made on time for FHA. In Chapter 7, so 4-2 foreclosure is a little bit heavier on conventional, but like it's not the end of the world. Let's talk. Let's find out where you're at. And then the next piece that we look at when qualifying a buyer is your income. And that's important because some people pre-qualify themselves. Well, I only make X amount of dollars. Well, let's look at that. Let's look at what your gross is. If you're self-employed, let's look at different options. But what we're looking at is your 2-year history. What's your 2-year history look like? Have you been at the same job? If no, it's okay. There's other options to get qualified. But again, most of the time, if you have job gaps, we just need to document it. So what this is meant to do is help calm fears and help people feel secure with their decision to talk with a professional to make their decision to purchase, because we can document things and make sure you're on a path. Same thing with self-employed. We want to see typically 2-year tax returns, sometimes 3. Or if we're doing self-employed, people like to do bank statement. And so all of this stuff is important to know. Is don't prejudge yourself. Come talk to us.
Oh, wait, hold on.
And we'll get you the slides too, so you'll have actual copies of them. But if you want pictures, take them. The next step, assets. What is this? Your bank statements. How are you going to pay for this property? And what we're looking for there is that's going to show your down payment reserves and your cash to close funds. And so when we go to the next one, you'll see that we're looking at, we must verify them. What does that mean? It means that they have to be in a source like a bank, and we need to be able to look back 60 days and see that it's been there, that it's seasoned, that because we want to make sure you don't have a loan out that could jeopardize your ability to repay. We have to source large deposits. So this might seem intimidating, but if we do it all up front, before you ever put your money on the line on a contract, guess what? You don't have anything to worry about because we've already done the work. And that's where it's like getting through, because when you get to an apartment, they want to see your bank statements. They want to see your pay stubs because they want to make sure you can repay. So actually the qualification, if you've ever rented a place, is pretty close to the same as buying a property, except for you're building wealth instead of someone else's. And there's other ways to qualify if you don't have a bunch of savings. Down payment assistance. One of my favorites is T-Shack. It's fantastic. They have 2 options. One, or they actually have 3, but one is a grant where it's treated as a gift, usually up to 5% of funds are available of the total loan amount. They have 3-year forgivable second liens. What that means is there's no interest, there's no payment. You stay in the home 3 years, the funds are completely forgiven. If you sell or refinance in that 3-year period, those funds are paid back to the program at closing of the refi or sale. And then they have ones that are no DPA that just have pretty good low rates, and that MCC credit, something we'd look at. If somebody had a tight DTI and they qualified for the income amount for MCC, you can add that, which is a mortgage certificate credit. to help you get a little bit more room in your debt to income. Now, this is like an example of payments. So you could see from 300,000 to 400,000 purchase price with 5% DPA with FHA using T-Shack. And you can see the payment, $2,500 for a $300,000 house is not bad. And your cash to close is $6,087.42. Now that's start to finish. What if your realtor is able to get you a seller credit? Now we're talking getting funds back at closing. Because what you need to get under contract is your earnest, option, and appraisal money. Earnest is typically 1%, roughly. Options usually 100, 300 bucks, somewhere in there.
Max.
Maybe
500 if it depending on the price point of the
yeah,
house.
if it's multiple offers. And then you're going to need your inspection money, which appraisal is usually 700, but when you're a part of this class, you get that covered. And then your homeowners, your home inspection, which is separate, that's on you. But you're able to get back at closing what you put in earnest, option, and appraisal. And why I leave this down here is so that the realtor knows what they need to go in and ask for, at least to where you don't have to bring any more funds to close and you might get a check back. So, but even still, 6,000 is a lot better than 10, 20, 40,000 that some people think. And that's where I can show these different examples. But I like to show people this because when you're paying that $2,568 a month, a portion of that's going to building your wealth. And if homes go up 5% that year, you made $15,000. That's a lot better than $0 paying rent, because then you have to pay what you paid in rent plus the depreciation or the appreciation loss. So now you just lost 50 grand in 1 year by renting. The next one. And so that's why I like to go over the misconceptions about the DPA programs, that it's only for low income. That's not true. We have some that don't have an income cap, and that it's too complicated. I handle everything in-house. So it's the same one application. The only difference is there's a home buyer education course that you take online. It's like 2 or 3 hours, and you have a certificate, which is actually very valuable. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't that kind of how you decided to get?
It is 100% how I ended up in the program, because I was looking at buying my first home back in 2022. And I went through the Homebuyer seminar class. And after taking the class and engaging with a realtor who did not take her craft seriously, like she couldn't tell me if I was in the flood zone. There were so many things she couldn't tell me. She couldn't tell me what area that I was in, and she had told me the house that I was looking at. Like she couldn't even tell me what city I was in. And I was like, you know what? There's a lot of disservice happening to my community. I really need to be a voice. And so when I left corporate America, because of the homebuyer class that I took, this became my new career.
Yeah, and it's important. That's why, because the thing is with these huge impact moments, the right partners are important. And a lot of people joke online about not just the interest rates, but what do a mortgage lender do? What does a realtor do? And they're doing more than just letting people into doors. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their client. That's a legal binding obligation to make sure that they take care of your money, that they inform you, that they take this seriously and know the markets, know what's going on and what can impact you. And that's huge, because if you get the right person that does it the right way, it sets you up for success long term. And that's why this stuff is so important, why we're here doing these trainings, because we want to demystify this process and help encourage, whether they use us or not, that you use this as an impetus to make a decision to invest in your future, people here and online.
And before we even jump, even with the DPA for low income, it's not just for low income families. T-Shack allows you to do what, up to $142,000?
It depends if it's a target area, but right now I think most areas in North Texas
Like
are
138,
145.
145.
Yeah.
And that's not even the low impact areas.
No, that's just normal.
So it's not just for low income.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like some people think, oh, you can only do this if you're very low income, or if, whatever. But absolutely not. I've had clients who had funds in the bank to close, but they could use the DPA to then take the funds that they have and maybe pay off some revolving debt. And now they don't have a car payment anymore. Reduces their monthly debt servicing by $500-600 a month. And now they can just focus on their mortgage, because they didn't use their own funds to get in. They could use their funds
credit cards.
Exactly.
Page.
Yes, exactly. Page. Paying off cards. This is why this is so impactful, because some people don't know what they don't know, and their budget is based around their servicing of debt versus what would your home search look like if you didn't have debt. How do we make that happen? So if I can get people out of 23 and 26% interest and into a home, even if it's at 6.875, you just saved yourself 20% interest. And that's huge. But the last part is the property for qualifying for a mortgage. So all of this other stuff gets taken care of way before you even put in an offer. The next part is when the offer's in, we do what's called an appraisal. We need to make sure that that property is up to code and up to standard. And so there's different types of appraisers, but the one appraiser is typically licensed to do all appraisals. Because if you're in the business, you don't want to miss out on opportunity because you only do conventional. They're licensed. So that's where I find it funny sometimes where you're like, oh, will this pass a FHA appraisal? It's like, is there something you're worried about the property? Because the only real big difference between like a FHA and a VA appraisal versus a conventional is they pay a little bit more attention to peeling paint and wood rotting insects. And so that is something that you don't want missed, because in my case, I bought a very expensive house and it wasn't looked at. So on the bottom of a house, there's your foundation, and then there's the masonry line, and there's supposed to be 2 to like 4 inches of space for concrete showing. Well, most of mine had none, and it was right up to the brick line. So water was able to get into my house and cause about $40,000 to $50,000 worth of damage on my floors. That was FHA, would never have been allowed. They would have said, this dirt has to come down, you got to dig it down, and then we can close. Because it's conventional, nobody even paid attention to it. So that cost me, and now I'm like, anytime I ever feel pain, I always make sure I tell clients, because I want them to avoid the pain that I've experienced. Escrow shortages, and now this. So every time I'm looking at, when people send me a house, I'm like, what's that foundation look like? Is it got there? Is it sloped? Because that stuff can hit you, because it's now considered a flood in your house. And we talked about flood insurance. Flood is, if there's ponding water and it can get in your home, that's a flood, and your insurance won't cover it.
Unless you have
flood insurance.
And if you're not in a flood zone,
yep.
Why do you buy flood insurance?
Yep, exactly. But that's where sometimes touring, if it's raining, some people avoid it. Now I'm an advocate of like, consider it, or at least drive by it, something to see how it looks. Is there any pooling of water? Because that can cost you. But that's where some of the differences. They're going to look at the property. Does it look good? And this is kind of a roadmap. We're going to get pre-approved. That's what we do up front. You're going to find your home. We're going to send disclosures. The first round of disclosures are usually a little bit elevated because we don't know what your taxes are going to be. We don't know exactly what your insurance is going to be. And we have to disclose the numbers because there's tolerance cures that we'd have to cover. But there's going to be multiple rounds of disclosures. Once the disclosure back goes to processing, then we do the inspections and appraisals, underwriting. We get the approval. Great. Now we're getting it back in for clear to close, finalize. Now we send the CD out, the closing disclosure. The documents get issued. Now you're sitting at table, funding, and into your new home. That's my process. Now we'll go with Michelle.
And we'll switch to me. And
yes.
So kind of like we talked last time, I think I'm on camera. I'm going to switch. We'll rotate. Tag. Just to make sure that I'm in view. Because I was not in view over there, so I'm glad I did switch when I looked at the camera. So kind of by my process is, you want to make sure whoever your realtor is that they service the area that you're in, that they know what roads are coming in. They know what developments are coming in. A really big one for me are EJTs, and that's extrajudicial territories. And why those are important is if you get a realtor, which I've had happen, who's based out of Houston, and they've never even come here, and they want to sell you a property because somehow you linked with them up on social media. Okay, but they don't know the area, and so they don't know it's an EJT. So they help you buy that property. What they don't tell you is that property can be annexed into the city, and so now your taxes are going up. And so that's why it's important that you get with someone that is geographically competent so that you're not in debt down the line. Because one of the things Ron's and I talked about, this is a chaotic process. If we lie to you and tell you that it's not, they're lying.
Yep.
It is very chaotic. However, your team makes it seem like that it's not, because we take the body hits so that you don't have to, which means we have to know what we're doing. And we have to know how to get you through minefields throughout this entire process so that we're doing what we promised we would do. Protect your investment, protect your money, and make sure that you have a solvent deal when you close on closing day. The other thing you want to make sure is, are they experienced with the type of properties that are you in? I have never sold a property that has more than 6 bedrooms. So I'm probably going to talk to someone if that happens to me. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
But if you got a 4 bedroom down, 5 bedroom, I've actually just did one of those recently, then I'll have that conversation with you, because as it gets bigger, it goes into multifamily. And if you don't understand multifamily, there's different regulations that you've got to follow. And so this goes back to that, having that geographical competency. You got to know about their team. I've got 6 under contract right now, and me and Ron was talking about this last night and this entire week. In the last week, I've had to reach out to not only my lender, I've had to reach out to pool specialists, I've had to reach out to foundation experts, to pool experts, to roof experts, to electricians. When I leave here, I've got to head over to a house in a moment to meet with a contractor who's going to be doing some work. So you need to know who your team is. If you have an issue, are you going into a yellow page for someone who you don't know their background, you don't know how reliable they are, or is your realtor working with a team that they have a proven result that when they make that repair, because repairs will be made throughout this process, can you count on it? Or are you dealing with a situation, which I hate to raise the issue, where you're paying $55,000 to redo your floors because the water came in?
Thank you.
How long have they been in business? I'm not a big proponent of the how long have they been in business, in all honesty. And the reason that is because I come from a background where knowledge is transferable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can take your knowledge from a different area and transfer it into a new area, and you consider your business a business and not something to play with, and that's the difference. Are they serious about what they do? Or is it a part-time hobby? If it's a hobby, I probably don't want you representing me. But if you're serious and you're going to get educated and you know what you're talking about and you're working with people and partnering with people who know what they're talking about, that's all that matters. And your reputation is key. If they don't care about their reputation, then it's probably not someone I want representing me, because that means they're not going to live up to a code of ethics. Mm-hmm. And I'm really big on code of ethics. I have burned relationships when you violate my ethics. Mm-hmm. Will they communicate with you consistently? I'm really big. Most realtors should be. How do you like to communicate? Do you like text? Do you like emails? Do you like phone calls? Whatever you need, that's how we communicate. And then, of course, how are we going to work together with your loan officer? And I can't tell you how many times I've reached out to Ron on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock or a Monday night at 9 o'clock because I want to put in an offer and I need a pre-approval letter. And he stops what he's doing, and within 30 minutes, I've got that letter so that I can send what I need to send. It happened just last week when we went under contract. So you can go to the next one.
Yes.
So this is our 12-step process. Very similar to the loan process. I think his is like 9 steps. Mm-hmm. Ours is 12. But the first thing is we sit down, we have a consultation. I do not, 99% of all the people that I work with, I have at least a buyer conversation. There are some scenarios where life happens and we skip this step, but it's very rare. But that step has happened. It just didn't happen with me. So I get all of the data up front. What are your needs? What are your non-negotiable? What areas are you looking at? What are we looking for? And Ron and I talk about this a lot. And the reason that becomes important is because when we get to step 3, I need to know is when we find a property that you want to look for, if all of the things that you want meet your need and it looks the way you want to, are you ready and prepared to act today? And if I didn't meet 1, the answer is going to be no. So I need to know what 1 is. What are your needs? What are your wants? Then we move to step 2. If you're not pre-qualified, I'm going to send you over to my preferred lender first to see if we can get you qualified. Once we get you qualified, we'll set you up on a Real Scout search. That search is going to give you a list of homes in the areas that you're looking for based off the criteria that you're looking for. You need a 3-bedroom, you need a 2-bedroom, you need a walk-in closet, whatever that looks like. We're going to get that search. When you've got a minimum of 2 to 3 of those, I want a minimum of 2 or 3 because even before gas became almost $4 a gallon, yeah. I want us to make sure that we're maximizing our time. Some people are confused about what buying real estate is. It is not going to look for a dress. Right. It is going with an intention to find your perfect home. Unless you're Ron, very few people find it on the very first home that you look at. Most of us need at least 2 or 3 that we want to look at. But when you get past 3, they start to look alike. And so that's why I like to keep it at about 2 to 3. Then we're going to get it contract accepted. Once we get accepted, we're going to go into within 3 days, you've got to get your earnest and option money in. I typically like mine in day one, if not day two, because I want us to do an inspection day one, if not day two, because I want the rest of that time to negotiate. I do not like being last minute where it's about to expire and we're still negotiating, because if we let it expire, our negotiating power drops. And now we're maybe settling when we didn't have to settle on some things, because the option period literally says you can wake up, and I joke about this, little baby Jesus can say, don't buy this house, and you come tell me that, and I send you a form to terminate.
Mm-hmm.
That's how easy it is. Once we get out of option, it's contingencies that can get us out of that contract if you decide you want to back out of for any reason. Otherwise, even if you back out, you lost earnest and option. If you go through, those get credited at close, which is where Ron talks about getting money back. Then we're going to go into setting up your utilities, doing your inspections. I've never gone into a house that didn't have something that was wrong with it, even a new build. Sometimes new builds have more problems than pre-owned. But the goal is to figure out what they are and figure out what is maintenance issues and what needs to be repaired. Functional items, HVACs, foundation, roofs, plumbing, electrical, all those are things that can cost you a lot of money, and we want to take care of those immediately if we can during the negotiations. Once we get through negotiations, we're going to send you over to home insurance and you're going to call and get a quote. You're going to get your declaration page. You're not going to pay for it. You're going to send it to Run. And that's going to be a part of your cash to close, which they're going to take, 14 months of prepayment? 14 or 15 months, I think. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to move over. We've already negotiated repairs. Now we're in the loan process. You're getting a whole bunch of documents where you're having to e-sign. And some of those numbers are right. Some of those numbers are guessing. But as we get more and more data, they become more and more firm. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to get over to title. We're going to do a final walkthrough. There's a couple of reasons, bless you. There's a couple of reasons why we do a final walkthrough. One is we want to make sure the home that you looked at when you wrote the contract is still the home in the same condition that it was when we wrote the contract. If we negotiated repairs, we want to check it and make sure all those repairs have been completed to your satisfaction before you sign. Because once you sign, if the repairs didn't get done, your only recourse is to sue. And yeah, you might get money back, but that's a tedious process. So we try to eliminate things like that. That's how we protect your money. Then we go through the option period. We go to walkthrough. We get to title. We send the documents. We sign your documents. They call and tell me we're closed and funded. I hand you your keys. And that is the 12-step process.
Yep.
With that being said, it is time to go to questions, I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Boom. Q&A.
Q&A.
I'm going to unplug this.
You can unplug that.
You guys can ask questions. I'll go see if anybody's got questions over there. Yeah, and one thing I did want to mention too, with the negotiations, I know some people have questions about rate, right? But the thing is, one of the single most powerful options and opportunities that realtors present is their ability to control the rate, because they can negotiate seller concessions. That can do temporary buy downs or permanent rate buy downs. And like we were just talking with one of our clients that we closed last week, they got enough to get a little bit of money back at closing, plus buy down their rate on a 2-1 buy down, saved her like, was it $400 a month for the first 12 months? And it's like $200 the next 12 months. And then by year 3, it's her full payment. But in that time period, she's getting raises every year. She's having fun. She's going to have a renter, but she's been able to achieve both of her end state goals, save money and then get a little bit of money back at closing. So that's the part where not prejudging the situation of the market, because there's options out there. And I wanted to touch on that. Because it's a key factor of using the right realtor, because I track all of the numbers, and I think your average is like near $10,000 in concessions that you're getting for your clients. That's not going to happen when the market shifts back to a seller's market, because right now, no matter what anybody said, there are pockets where it's competitive and still kind of a seller's market, but right now it's a buyer's market. And we know that because we see concessions being done on 95+% of the deals. So while it's still a buyer's market, now our job is to teach people why to buy. And so why to buy, because people are nervous usually this time. And when people are nervous, Warren Buffett talks about it. When people are greedy, that's when you need to be a little bit cautious. But when people are cautious, that's when you need to be a little greedy, because this is the opportunity to pounce on things and deals, because Sellers like, if they're selling right now, it's because they have to sell. That's not your problem. You got to get your money. You got to make sure what you're doing makes sense. And so a home that maybe last year or 2 years ago, if it was selling right now, might be able to sell for a little bit more. That doesn't mean that the home is worth less. It means that the conditions in the market have determined that this home is not going to sell for its max dollar. People want a deal. They want a discount. So you either wait to sell or you give up some of your money. That is where clients are winning right now and getting massive credits. And I wish more people would understand that, because especially as we're going into tax season, people getting tax refunds, $3,000-$4,000. You can get a house for that and potentially get your money back at closing, and to not feel pressured to stretch your budget for your first home. It's your first. It's like driving a car. Did you get a Ferrari for your first car? Anyone in here?
No.
No?
I had a Buick.
Yeah. Imagine if you would have had a Lamborghini, you know what I mean? Like your first car. Like, it might sound cool, but it's going into a tree. And I didn't even have a Lamborghini. I had a 1991 Chevy Cavalier Z24 that I felt was as fast as a Lamborghini. And I took that into a rock at about 80 and crushed my side door, and it was nasty. BMW, I bounced off the wall and just didn't even scratch it at 130. But needless to say, you get something, you're going to crash at your first car. That's why parents usually get an apartment, buy a condo, and then use that as your first rental property. Buy a duplex, live in one side, rent the other side out. Now living at 12, 24 months, they call it house hacking, where you stay in a property 2 years and then buy your next one as a primary and get a renter in that one. But not enough people are talking about these things. So that's where I wanted to share that too. And then obviously answer any questions you had and go from there.
Yeah.
But you got any other questions for us today?
I don't think I read out a question, but I'd like to say the interest in property taxes and certain area codes that you're looking for. Like down payments. All right, for like a first time, so what's a good like price range if you was looking for like what I was saying, like a triplex or a quadplex?
So on that, we'd look at your budget, what you're comfortable paying if somebody shorts the rent. But like if I could go back in time, I've shared this with you before, I would buy duplexes and fourplexes as soon as I could and live in one side as my primary for 1 to 2 years, and then go buy it again and again and again, because you can use down payment assistance to buy a duplex and get help with funds, stay in it 3 years. Now you can go get another property. And so that's where it's like the key is like it's not in the same area that you're looking in, but one of the best deals I've told a couple different investors is a property Nichelle has right now. It's 150 grand. It has, or 100, is it 150?
It's 200, but it's gonna go under too.
So it's 200 grand, but there's a renter on the other side, and he's paying like 900,
800,
900 a month, somewhere in there. So that would almost cover the mortgage on that. And so then you have another side that might need a little bit of work, but do a 203K. And now you get the work done before you move in. You have one side that's yours. The other side's rented out. When they leave, now you can go move in that side, charge the other higher rent for your side, and now fix that one over time. And now you have 2 doors that you own for less than 200 grand. And but it's in Dallas, and some people don't want to be in that part of Dallas, which is understandable. But sometimes if you look at it, am I willing to invest 3 years of my life to build some generational wealth, because that area is booming and it's going to continue to be invested in? And so investors look at opportunity different than somebody who's only looking for it as a emotional decision to check a box. And if we can help people see, because Nichelle hinted on it, but it's true. Buying a home is in the top 5 stressful things a person does. They do it maybe 2 to 3 times their whole entire life. And on average, there's 9 companies and 32 people involved in every closing. It's chaos. It's herding cats. And if 95% of them have ADHD and probably are unmedicated, it's real scary. And so it's like, this is where we're in this business. So that's what I'm saying. Go ahead.
So when you was saying about like renting out a property,
Yeah.
and living in the other one for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So how does that like normally work? Like,
Yeah, I can walk you through it. So say like I usually used to only buy property with accessory dwelling units because I like the flexibility to be able to rent out the place if I wanted to make extra money. Same thing with the duplex or fourplex. You stay on one side, and now you are the landlord of your property. So you have lease agreements in place, just like if you're a renter, and they are obligated to pay you money. Now, if they don't, you have to follow then the process of being a landlord, which is the eviction process, the notifications, and all of those things. But you can also pay a company to manage your rental side of it. Like Judge Fight has a property management company where if you have a duplex or fourplex, you on one side, you just pay them 10% and they collect and manage your property and make sure you're good. So there's multiple different ways. Go ahead.
So say like within year 2, you accumulated enough to go buy another property. Are you able to do that, or do you have to finish out like?
Now you can buy another one. Yeah, and you don't even have to put 20% down. You can buy it as a primary. As long as you're going to live in the next one as a primary, you get a rental agreement on this one for both sides. And now you go buy your next one as a primary and put 3.5 or 5% down. And there's programs and opportunities to get into that too. That's why people, if they do it and they have a realtor and a lender or people in their lives that care about not just this transaction, but the last transaction and what are we doing in the middle to make sure you achieve that goal, then that's how you do it. Because I remember when we talked back then, one of your goals was to have some land, have a little pond to fish in, and have some space to kind of get isolated. And I don't know what that kind of property price is, but what if it's not right now, but what if that's something we can easily hit in 5 years because we bought the right properties right now, then had an exit strategy of when to sell to go and get something like that. And so now it's not saying no, but what if it's not right now? And then you can build to it. Go ahead.
And I'll just step up, and I can tell you that most duplexes and quadplexes that are in great condition, they're going to run you anywhere from 400,000 up to about 1.2 mil. Mm-hmm. But having said that, Ron can tell you that depending on how many doors it has and what the income is going to be for those properties, that can support you and still being able to purchase it. But that changes the value. That's not a $300,000 home.
Right.
That's just something that we have to really partner together to make sure that the numbers make sense.
Yep. And if there's a one that needs love, that's equity gain for you because there's programs like 203K, 203K limited, home style renovation, home ready renovation, to where you can get the repairs done in the loan and add it to your loan payment instead of having to pay out of pocket. And it's done before you even move in. So like there's some power there. That's why I always like talking about that because there's such an option on your freaking duplex. I'm like, bless. Why is that not sold yet?
Especially I'm negotiating a contract on it right now,
okay,
actually.
Good. Yeah, because but there's property out there, and so that's the part where it's just looking at it, looking at the area, what's your That's why that first meeting with your realtor is important because you gotta and it's transparent as you can make it and throw it out there because before I bought my first home, I was in the business, but I've never bought a house. And this was a realtor I hadn't used ever before, but I tried them out. I'm like, okay, let's try to look for a house. And she was like, oh, let's do this. And sent me a bunch of listings. I was overwhelmed. Didn't make a decision. Then I did an open house with a realtor that I had only seen. That was the first time I met him. Didn't ever talk to him afterwards, but he helped me buy my first house because he asked me, he said, I told him about my journey. He's like, man, what are something that would make it to where shorten this list down to like maybe 4 or 5? I was like, I really wouldn't mind if Monica had a studio space. He's like, you mean like an accessory dwelling unit? I was like, yeah, do they have those here? He's like, let's look. What city you want to be in? Richardson. Boom, Richardson, 3 houses popped up. I was like, that house is really nice. It's been completely renovated. I went there, looked at it, bought it. So I went from 6 months of looking at a bunch of inundated information on a search to a guy showing me one home, and I bought it. And then that was the last I ever talked to him. And then I bought multiple homes after that. But that search, what would it be that's in your budget, in your area, and that would make it unique to where you pull the trigger? Because they do go blind after a while. They all look the same. Go ahead.
Another reason why I was saying like I want to stay south of Belline because I went to the union meeting like last week, and right now they have like 10 data centers
Yes.
in Red Oak, Lancaster,
Mm-hmm.
Wilmer,
Yeah.
and Waxahachie.
Yep.
So you have it's travelers coming
Yes.
to look for like rooms or places
Yep.
to stay. So that's what I was saying. And basically they were telling us like for the next 10, 15 years,
Yes.
it's gonna be worked towards this way.
Yep.
But
So
see, in that area, that you're gonna find some duplexes in that area.
Yeah.
Like the apartment complex I'm in now, literally like it's the fence and the street over is nothing but quiet places.
Yes.
Like it's in Waxahachie.
Yep.
So that's why I was saying like in where I'm at now, like where I work, is like Lancaster, Wilmer.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen like the Wilmer that they also building up.
Yep.
But I know right now, Waxahachie, they do have like quiet places available.
Yeah. You got to look at them because in essence, how it works is we're going to look at your income, but then we're going to look at what the rental amount is for the other 3 units that's in the fourplex. And now they can use those to offset the hit to income. So say it's a $500,000 home and the payment's $4,500 a month. Let's just say for easy math. But if you're able to get $1,500 for each of those doors, you just made your entire mortgage payment between those 3 doors. Now you're break even. Now your income is a net positive, regardless of your mortgage payment. So you could qualify for that. And that's the part where that, they take about 75% or 70% of the rent if you don't have a current contract on it or if you've never had history of it. So yeah, it might be a $300 or $500 hit on your debt to income ratio, but now you're qualifying with a $500 a month mortgage payment instead of $4,500. So that's the part where we got to just look at it and see what your goals are. And I think that's a brilliant idea because as AI and other technologies develop, there's going to need for electricity and AC. And like you said, people coming in, why not get the fourplex? Now you have that, stay in a couple of years, get you another fourplex. Maybe in the next 5-10 years, you've got 5 fourplexes that you own.
20 doors.
You own 20 doors. And two of those properties would probably pay for all the properties. And now you have positive cash flow that you could retire off of. Or sell it and then move to a different country and be balling. That's what I'm thinking about. Like, I'm out. go anywhere. Money stretches real long in Thailand or somewhere. Fiji. I looked at it. I'm telling you.
I like the Fiji part.
Yes. Sure, I'm on an island, but I don't care. I don't go outside. But those are some of the things. So that's where you just got to get specific and know exactly what you want. And there's going to be some compromise but anything that you go and you see inside the house, if you don't like it, like flooring, that can be put in the law. What does it need to look like? And she touched about this in the first meeting, we want to identify if we found everything you're looking for, what would be the thing that would prevent you from putting in an offer today? And so part of that sometimes might be cash to close. I don't have enough saved. Okay, so if I could get you credit and hook you up with the right program, and your money is now taken care of, what would stop you then? And if somebody's like, well, I got a lease. What if I can get enough of a credit to give you the money to pay the early termination fee? Because usually it's 1.5 times 1 month's rent.
2 times.
2 times, sometimes it's 2 times. So we just got to look at your contract. Now we know that. Okay, so now we know how much of a credit we need, programs we need. Now there's no barrier of entry. You can get in because these problems are solved. Now it's just finding the right house. If it's credit and we know we've talked about it and we know where the score goal is, now we know what timeline. It might not be all the way until September. Maybe it's June. But if you don't know what you don't know. So that's part of that initial consultation and then talking with me and getting that process going.
Good question.
Yeah, because who you choose for your lending is up to you. You're allowed to shop and do all this stuff. And what I always encourage my agents to say is, but I'm confident a 10 to 15 minute conversation with Ron will be worth your time. Because we're going to talk, and we talk and go over different options and programs. And if there's, especially with new builds, sometimes people go to a new build, they're going to make you get pre-qualified with their lender.
Even if you have your own lender, they're going to make you get pre-qualified
okay.
because they want to make sure that you're solvent.
Yep.
You don't have to use their lender, even though many of them will tell you that you do.
Yeah.
To get their incentives, you don't have to use them.
Right. But that's part of where you just go into it and see your plan and also explain the risks of new builds, because sometimes people don't realize if you go in a new build, is the community one that will limit your ability to rent out your property? What does it look like if you had to sell in 2 years?
What phase are they in? I'm helping somebody with a short sale now,
mm-hmm.
And they bought phase 1.
Yep.
And so when I went over there and looked at the property this week, there are literally 6 brand new builds for sale next to it.
Yep.
And so this person bought, they paid $475,000 for the property. These brand new builds, they're selling for $389,000.
Yep.
There's $100,000 difference. As a buyer, which one do you want?
See what I'm saying? But that's the stuff that people don't know. If they just go to a realtor, clicks button, get a mortgage, and they're in this property, and nobody ever asks them, hey, what are the risks or potentials of you selling in the next 12, 24, 36 months? And if that is not a real conversation, those buyers have every recourse to go after those agents. And I've been warning agents about that, especially because escrow accounts, remember taxes on new builds, especially, they get usually set up on unimproved, and then the next year, the year after, it adjusts the full value. So some clients are seeing their payments go up $1,800, $1,500 a month because of the taxes. Yeah. Can you imagine if you thought, oh, I'm good, I've got my budget, I'm paying right around the max, but then the next year they say, well, your payment's going from $2,500 to $4,000.
You see that more on new builds than you do anything, and that's because they're dealing with unapproved taxes. So the first year they're dealing before the home was built.
Yep.
Year 2, the home is built, and so now it's been evaluated and the taxes are on it. I've got a new build client that Ron was helping me with now.
Mm-hmm.
We went through these questions, and I made sure that she understood. We were in phase 2, so we were in the final phase. So she was going to benefit there, but then she also wants to buy again in 3 or 4 years. I'm like, okay, even though you're a VA veteran and you get VA benefits, you're going to need to put somewhere between 3.5 and 5% down for no other reason than you want to build again in 5 years. And if you don't, you're going to be upside down.
Yeah.
But those are things you learn through this process. That's what I mean by going above and beyond. It's not about getting you in this door. It's about helping you with the next door and the one after that. And in your case, you want multiple doors. So we've got to take care of that first one so that you're solvent enough to get that next door.
Yep. Yep.
Good questions.
Yeah. Any other ones? No, we end up finishing super quick, but
we've been getting good at that.
I know. We can give you back most of your Saturday.
How much does credit affect the whole process?
Depends on the program. So if you need DPA, down payment assistance, which sometimes people don't, especially with the credits that the realtor is able to get. But if you need them, most of them have a minimum of a 620 credit score. So it only affects that. But if you have a 620 or an 820, it's the same rate on TSHAC and SETH and TDHCA. So that's a kind of a great neutralizer, is that people, if they have had issues in the past or had some stuff with credit, they can still get a home and not get ruthlessly taxed on what's called LLPAs because of their credit or some of their other dynamics. Yeah, so it impacts it only in if you need it to get the program. But again, with credit, some stuff is as easy as paying down a balance or adding some stuff that self-reports and different little tactics. And we can look at that, and I do a wayfinder for all my clients to see exactly what they need to do to get their scores right.
And you also have your rapid rescore.
Mm-hmm. So if it's paying down a debt to 10% utilization, and you do that, I can then take that receipt and say, hey, credit bureaus, here's the receipt that they paid this debt down, so the utilization is under 10%, rescore it accordingly. And sometimes I can do 10, 15, 20 points. So there's always a way. Yeah. Nice. Well, yeah. Right. And we'll send you the updated coupon. Yep. Let me see if I got any questions over there. Nope, we're good on questions. Awesome. We'll see you next time. Last Saturday of the month.